When we have records, OWD is set to private or OW set to be public read only. These are two restricted access at object. If it is public read only, read write, then there is no restriction. So owner and non-owner has the same permissions, right? No difference. There is no record level security. But if I am setting it to private or I am setting it to public read only, then I have some kind of restriction. That is a record level security that has been enforced on that object. Okay, that means the owner has some special privileges which a non-owner does not have, even if they have the same profile. Okay, ownership based extra access or ownership based restrictions are imposed on that object. Okay, when it is done at that point, what are the ways in which I can bypass it? That means I am not changing the OWD, but for special situations, how can I bypass it? Because there can be teams on which I am working. There can be many situations wherein the record is not available to another non-owner, but it is needed for him to work. The most easiest mechanism is to do a manual sharing. Okay, these are all called for sharing. Record sharing is giving access to non-owners. Okay, that is what is sharing. Giving a record access to a non-owner is called sharing. The first technique is manual sharing. Who can do this? An owner can do that. The owner can directly use a button called sharing and share a record or his own record to somebody else. Clear? Any questions? A little sophisticated version of this is called team sharing. This is also done by owner. Here, he can add his team members into a record and give different accesses to that person. But this is only available for some standard objects, that is account, opportunity, case. These account teams, opportunity teams, and case teams. Only these three objects has this special team sharing logic. No other objects has it. Okay, neither custom object nor standard objects. So please remember, team sharing is only available for three objects, standard objects. But it is also kind of a manual sharing, but it is little sophisticated. These two are manual process. That means the owner has to do it manually for each record he wants to share. Right? He can define a default team also. That way, he does not have to add individual users. If he assigns the default team, all those users will be assigned to that record. It's an easier way of clubbing all the people whom you are working every day. But you as a system admin have also the opportunity to automatically share records to people. Okay, or define logic driven sharing. Okay, so what is that? First sharing, automated sharing, is called role hierarchy. Every user has how many profiles?
One, sir.
One. And profile is mandatory or not?
The profile is mandatory.
One profile is mandatory. Whenever you define a user, you have to define a profile, right? Role is not mandatory, right? Role is not mandatory, but there can be one role that you can define in a user. Okay. What happens if you define a role? If you give a role to a user, then the role hierarchy comes into action. That means now there is a role 1, role 2, role 3, role 4, role 5. This is my role hierarchy of the company. Okay, what would be the actual names? Let's give some actual name. CEO. This is sales head. Service head. Okay. This is sales executive. India. This is sales executive. USA. Okay. Every organization will have roles like this. Okay. So there can be like 5 users who have this role. There can be 10 users who have this role. There can be sales head. Probably it will be one person. CEO will be one person. So when I have a role hierarchy like this, any user like user 1 is a sales executive of USA. He has that role. That means any user 2 who is his boss and any user 3 who is boss of this boss will automatically see the records which is owned by user 1. That record is already visible to the user who is higher in the role hierarchy. Clear? You have 3 users. Or these 2 users have a role which is higher than this user. That's why these 2 people will now be able to see this person's record automatically. What if there is another user, user 4, who has same role as SE USA? People who have the same role cannot see each other's record. Okay. Or if I have another user here, user 6, who is sales executive India, this person cannot see anybody, these people's records. Only sales head will be able to see user 6's record, user 4's record, and CEO will also be able to see these 3 people's record. Clear? Users who are on the same level in the role hierarchy cannot see each other's records. Users who are above the role hierarchy can only see below people's records. Clear? Same level, or if you are down, you cannot see boss's records. Like user 1 cannot see user 2 or user 3's record. Not possible. Okay? Only the boss can see junior's record. Okay? Any questions? This is automatic sharing. This then you have to define a role hierarchy in your organization. And you have to assign a role to a user. If that user does not have a role, then role hierarchy is not applicable for that user. Okay. All standard object by default will use role hierarchy for sharing of records. Custom objects is up to you whether you want the role hierarchy sharing or not. I will show you how you can stop role hierarchy sharing for custom objects. For standard objects, you cannot stop role hierarchy sharing. Okay. But this is automatic sharing. Okay. Once defined, automatically those records will be shared. The user or owner does not need to do anything. Another is sharing rule. It is quite similar to any rule, just like you have done a validation rule. That means it works. It is an action. It fires. Similarly, sharing rule also fires. Sharing rule is giving access to people who are not in role hierarchy. So role hierarchy is like vertical sharing, right? So you are sharing the records to your bosses. What if I have to do a horizontal sharing like this? That means 2 people with the same role wants to see each other's record, or one user of India is supporting the US sales team. Okay, so he needs to see US records. Okay, so there can be ownership based rules, sharing rules, or there can be criteria based sharing rules. Okay, there are only 2 types of sharing rules: ownership based, criteria based. What is ownership based? Ownership based means when you are selecting records based on roles or user groups. When you are selecting records based on roles and user groups, then it is a ownership based sharing rule. When you are sharing records based on some criteria, that means any field value, that is a criteria based sharing rule. Now you have selected the records. Whom do you want to share? You can only share to a role or user group. User group means in Salesforce is called public group, a group of users. So you can share only to a role or a public group. You cannot share to individual. One person you cannot share. Okay, you can share to a group of users or a role. It is also automatic sharing. Okay, so you have a criteria like all accounts which has a billing address of USA needs to be shared to this role. Okay, what is a public group? Let's discuss this after this. Fifth method of sharing. What is the fifth method of sharing? Fifth method is of sharing is when I do not know whom to share. That means I cannot create a sharing rule, neither I can define a role hierarchy. It is a logic driven selection of the person to share. Okay, if that is a scenario where I do not know whom to share, how let me give an example. I have created a custom object, and on that custom object I have created a user lookup field, and it's called some coordinator. Now the requirement is whoever I select on that user should automatically see the record of the owner, because that coordinator is working with the owner on that record. So here the owner can choose any user on that field, right? It can be a user who is higher in his role hierarchy. It can be any user which is lower in his it can be any user who is not in hierarchy. It can be any user who is on the same level in his hierarchy. Here I cannot use role hierarchy, neither I can use a sharing rule. Why I cannot use sharing rule? Because I do not know whom to share. The user is selecting. It is a logic driven sharing. So whoever is applicable on that field or whoever has been selected by the owner on that field will automatically see the record. If that is the requirement, that means almost like doing a manual sharing automatically. Then what do you do? This is a logic driven sharing. It is called Apex managed sharing. How can you do this? Using a flow. What is a flow? We will discuss this later when we have a class of flows. Okay, that means I have to write some logic and I will do a Apex managed sharing. Okay, these are the normal 5 techniques of sharing. The 6th technique is not at all sharing, but it is overriding of OWD. That means for some people, you can define a permission set, or you can define in the profile a read all or modify all data that you have seen, right, in the permissions or the permission set. If you give this to permissions, then also OWD is not applicable for those people. They can see everybody's record. Okay, this is a way of to bypassing OWD, but it is not actually sharing. You are not sharing anything. You are giving access to all records, all non-records. Right? But so use this very like use it only when it is absolutely necessary. If you cannot do that using any of the 5 methods. Okay.
So what this method is called?
This is not a method. It's just giving access to the whole record of a table to somebody.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, sir.
If there is no logic required, it is just like that object, every record is needed for that person. In that case, you keep using this, right? If there is no filtering required, right? Every record of that object needs to be accessed by a person. Then in that case, you can define a read all and modify all on a permission set and assign that to that person. Yeah. The last method, and there are some additional methods of sharing, but we will not discuss this. It's just for you to remember the names so that if there is an interview, you can talk about it. But very advanced topics, very few people have used this. We will not discuss. One is basically writing a lightning component or visual force page. That means a code. If you write some code, or you can also do a visual flow, screen flow. You can also show some records to people who do not have access. Yeah. If you write code or define a flow, screen flow, then you can do that. That is also a way of bypassing OWB. And you can also do using enterprise territory management, a topic of higher studies, not something which we'll discuss in today's class. But remember the names: enterprise territory management. So lightning component, visual force page, and screen flows. Through this, you can also show records to people who do not have access to those records. And through enterprise territory management, you can share records to people, which is quite complicated. Yeah. So we'll not discuss this. So 8 mechanisms of showing records to non-owners, right? We have discussed this. Now give me the names one by one, and we'll go one by one and see that in Salesforce. Tell me, Yoner.
The first is manual sharing.
First is manual sharing. So let's see manual sharing in action. Okay, first and foremost, you have to first secure that object. Without securing the object, it won't work, right? So let's go and see what is the sharing setting for some objects. Did we create any custom object? Yeah, employee custom object was created, right? So see, let's see that. গুটি আছে না না তুলতে হবে থাকে তো আর যদি না থাকে তাহলে ওই ভাজাভুজি আছে ওগুলো okay so let's open workbench. We have a custom object called employee. Yeah, let's see that object. Good enough. It has a lookup with account. So we have owner field. That is very critical. Please remember that record level security is, as we remember, right? Sharing setting. You can only define this, or this will happen only if it is a lookup relationship. If it is a master detail, that is always controlled by parent, right? So this feature will not be available to them. So every object, be it standard object like account, all object has a share object with it. Okay, this is how Salesforce keeps track of what are we sharing. Okay, so just like employee, you see employee is there, underscore C. This is a custom object. There is also a shared object which Salesforce will create for you. That is employee underscore share. So let's see what is happening here. You see, there is a column called parent ID, row cause, and access level. Let's see these 4 fields. Right now, there is no records at all in this employee share. Okay, let us see that whether we have any records in employee at all. If not, we'll create some. I don't. Let's go and check the employee. There are no employees at all. Okay. So let us create some employees now. So maybe account. What's easier is that let's create a tab. Okay, I have added a tab. So now I can go ahead and employees tab is now available. So let's create some records. Paste one, some salary, ID. Let's concentrate our energies on this record. So if I now go into workbench, I see one record, and let's get the ID of this. So if I see ID, this is the ID, right? If you go and check this ID, actually this is the same ID, right? Okay. Now I will jump into employee share. Let's see, in employee share, do we have any field? There is no record. Why there is no record? Because the sharing setting is public read only, read write. That means there is no requirement of sharing. And that is why there is no need to share this record. So if I go to this, I will not see I have a sharing field, and I can do this sharing. I will show it how it will work. But first we have to mark this as secure. I will secure this and make it private. Take some time, this message will come. But what happens immediately is that now you'll see when you run, you will have one record. Okay. What is happening actually? Let's see this. Now, Salesforce is automatically keeping track of the sharing. What is saying? It is saying that the owner, this record is a parent ID, is this record, which is now shared to this user, and it has all access. And why? Because this is the owner of that record. So it is keeping track of every person who has access to that record. Employee records. Okay. So if there are two records, then there will be two entries in the sharing table. Okay. Now let us see what is happening when I do a share. It is important that I can also see the name. So let's give a name. So I can see now Animesh Banerjee is the owner of this record. Let's give this also the name. It's easier to see this. So test one employee name is the who has access. Animesh Banerjee has all access to that, right? So this is in the share table. Now, what will happen when I'm sharing this record? Let's start sharing. This is the manual sharing. This is the button to use. I can search any user. Always there will be an integration user. Select that. And I can give read-only access, read-write access, anything. So the owner is giving this access, okay? So if I give this access, you will see now there are two people who have access. And if you just query this again, this time you will see integration user has a read access and the row cause is manual. right? So this table is basically keeping track of your sharing, what is happening with this record. Okay, this is how manual sharing works. Team sharing is only applicable to account. So in order to give team sharing, what you have to do is that you have to enable account teams. Similar with, so let's see if we have enable account teams here. Here is account teams. Enable account teams. You have to enable opportunity teams also. You have to enable case teams also. Okay. So let's enable account teams. I have to add this to all layouts. I can define team roles. This role is nothing to do with the role hierarchy roles. Please remember that. Okay. This is a role which is assigned by the owner just to keep track that who is working with me for what roles and responsibilities for that record. That's it. Okay. These are nothing to do. These are default roles. You can change that also. Now, what will happen if I go to company and I change the page and let's bring the account teams in action. You can bring a new related list single here, and account teams is already there, so I can save it. What if I want to bring it here as a separate tab? In that case, I will go here. You see, I will create a tab. I will say I want to name it my way. I will say team. And here I want to bring this here. Okay. So now we have also seen how we can create a separate tab, right? So let's save and activate. Refresh the screen. So now account team tab is here. See, I can add team members now. I will say, let's add integration user. We'll define some team role. I will give some access. Let's see. Now account by default, he is set to read only. That is why if I go to account share, I think it was set to read only account. Let's see if they are tracking it or not. 0 records, right? Why? Because account is set to read only. So it is not tracking any sharing. So let's go and make account private. Or maybe this time I will make it account as public read only. This is also restricted. Yeah. Whenever I do that, now I do a account count. Immediately there are 37 records and account has already got this access. You see. Now you will see row cause, user ID, and account ID. Yeah. So let us concentrate our energy on this record. Account share ID. Sorry, not ID. Okay, so now we are seeing owner, all records are there, right? But this account, this guy is having a what? No ID, right? No access, same. Right? So if I give remove all members and try sharing once again. Oh, this is manual sharing. We'll come to that also. Both can work, okay? So let's see if I have indication user, account manager. Now you see read only access is there. I can give read write and read only both access. Let's give full access to this guy. Now you see there are two access that is given. One person has all access. One person has only edit access. Integration user has edit access on this account, and the row has his team. What if I gives another access? Like manual sharing also is done to this person. It's possible. I have another person like integration user. Not working somehow. I can give access, so you will see that everything will show up here. Who has what access and stuff, right? So everything is culminating. Owner can give team access or manual sharing. The row cause will change. If it is team sharing, it will show as team. If the access is given via a sharing button, then it's called manual. Any questions so far? Good. Before we move to the automation of access sharing, we'll see what is a public group. Public group is a group of users. Public group contains other public groups. It can contain roles. We'll show that. Like I have what is roles, we'll discuss this. It can also contain individual users. So you can say that these three people belong to this. So it and other public group can also be part of it. So I have now defined a group of users. I have selected a few individual users and I have also selected a role. That means all the users who have that role will also be selected in this public group. So this is a group of users to whom you can use that for choosing their records, or you can also use this public group to give access to these people. Okay. What is role? Role will look something like this. You see, expand all. By default, it is given like this. So CEO is the top role. Then in the same level, we have CFO, CEO, SVP, and so on. Under SVP, we have international, North America, repair services. Under sales, we have international marketing, North American sales. Yeah. So director, then channel sales team members, and so on. So these are basically different kind of roles. So you can assign people here, or like this. You can assign and you can select which user belongs to which role, right? And you can also assign this in directly the user. So if you go to the users, like integration user, you can go and change the role. You can change this role to any of the. This is also assignment. Same. You can use the role window, or we can use here. So here I have assigned the integration user role. So all the records of these integration users will now be shared to in the role hierarchy to all the people who are above him in role hierarchy. So if I see the role, internet, what did I give access to? International. So here, SVP, then CEO, all the people who are on top of that, all the users who are assigned to these roles will automatically see his records. Right? Any questions? Good. Again, I will go to sharing settings. In sharing settings, every object will have a rule which can be used to share. Like, let's go to the employee once again. Employee sharing, right? Account also has an account sharing similarly. So what I can do is that I will say ad hoc share. That means I am not using role hierarchy for sharing. There are two types of sharing rules: ownership-based sharing rule, criteria-based sharing rule. Ownership-based sharing rule means I can select records based on public groups, and I can give access public group roles. I can give access to public groups and roles. Simple. Now I have chosen all records which belong to users of my public group, and I have given access to all the users who belong to this public group. What does it mean? That means all the people inside this group will see each other's record, right? And they can read only. I can give read write share. I can do that also. So this is how I'm choosing my records. Whose record am I sharing, and this is to whom I am sharing. Similarly, I can choose records based on some criteria. Like I will say if the employee created by is equal to somebody, then we'll like share it to the public. So criteria based sharing rule means when I'm selecting a records based on field values, then it is criteria based sharing. When I'm choosing the records based on who is the owner, then I am using this. Any questions so far? So in this, we can just give any role access which belongs to any role, right? So role hierarchy or public group can be used. If you even if you do not have a role hierarchy in your organization, you can still use sharing settings and give access to different people automatically based on public groups. Clear? Any questions? Fifth option is flow-based sharing that we will discuss when we will be in the flow class. I will skip that. Apex managed sharing for today. The last part I will show it, which is basically how to give access to all records to a person, even if OWD is set to. So if you go to any my standard UI user, and you go to object setting and go to this employee record similarly. Edit. In this profile, if I give a view all access to this person, then they can see records of all users, even if the employee is private, but he can see everybody's record. If I give create access, they can create new records, but that would be owned by them. If I give edit records, then they will be able to edit their own records. They can delete their own records. If I give modify all, then they can modify somebody else's record also. Okay. So view all and modify all will give entire tables access on entire objects, all records access to a person, even if the OWD is set to private. Any questions? So this is the sixth mechanism of sharing.
So what will happen if we select only modify all?
I'll test it out.
Okay.
You cannot have modify all access without having your own edit access. Right? And create access is something which you can assign later.
Okay, sir. Got it.
So this is all we had for today's class. This is a very, very important class. Please mark up. Many questions will come in the interview for this. So please be very careful and study and repeat it again and again. There is one portion which we will discuss in next class, that is apex financial.